Welcome to the Wrestling Philosophy Show, where we discuss unique perspectives and beliefs on the sport of wrestling. Give us a follow or subscribe on various social media platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the show.
It's time to start planning for next season's tournaments. Be sure you have Smitty's Corner Rugs on your mats to protect them and keep them clean. Get a hold of him directly at smitty43952@gmail.com. If you have a tournament, it's the way to go. It creates a custom coach's box so your tournament runs efficiently and keeps the mats clean since they use a top spray MRSA killer.
Man, best thing to do is drop me an email, smitty43952@gmail.com, or you can text me at 740-278-8016. And again, we got inventory, man, and get a quick turnaround time. And our rugs are all top sprayed with our MRSA staph killer that kills coronavirus as well, man. So, you know, we were already keeping it clean and keeping it classy before Corona. Now you really got to have a corner rug, right?
We welcome today Todd Hibbs, Director of Wrestling, Alma College. How you doing today, Todd?
I'm doing great, Jared. Thanks for having me today. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. As we talked about it, Coach Tobias on about a year ago, and we talked about you, and we go back a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But thanks for taking the time. Always good seeing you. Long time, friends and family. Wherever you want to call it. But so thanks for taking the time today. It's been a while since we've seen or talked, but what's kind of your intro or your first memories of wrestling?
I come out of that same great state of wrestling that you do, out of the state of Ohio. As a young kid growing up, being a little behind the others in growth spurts, I think I was trying to play football and trying to play some other sports, and was always finding myself, on the short side and not quite as strong as the other kids. I found this great sport that gave me an opportunity. I mean, what is it now? It's crazy to think about. It's what, almost 45 years ago that I came home. My dad loves to tell this story that I came home and I said, "Dad, do you remember you said there's this sport where people only go against people their own size, and if I ever had an opportunity to do it at my school, you would support that?" Well, here it is. Sign me up for wrestling. Because I'd taken a few hard hits in football that had hurt me and this and that. And so he loves to tell that story because that was sort of the start of the journey. And I started wrestling in Ohio, and I was fortunate to grow up in a great area. I was in a tri-state area of Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, which had some distinctly different wrestling styles back in those days. I think in Ohio, we were really focused on our feet, and we were starting that era of let them up, take them down. And some of that was just getting going. And over in Pennsylvania, it was about brutality on top. And it was, figure fours were even legal back in these days. And I remember there were these brothers down in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, the Eddy brothers. And they used to ride everybody with those figure fours and scissors and things. And so I really grew up in a fortunate area. I got to combine the expertise of takedown wrestling in Ohio with some of that mat wrestling from over in Pennsylvania. And then I'd run down into the state of West Virginia and find some competition, sometimes people I hadn't seen. So a lot of long car rides in the Volkswagen Rabbit diesel to get the good gas mileage on the weekends, and to get to pick up as many matches as possible. And it just went from there, Jared. I fell in love with the sport. Partly just the beauty of the sport. I always enjoyed the art of wrestling, just the feeling and the motion, and the movements through this dance that we do in this sport of wrestling. And of course, the challenges mentally, but then also some early success. I think when you're a kid and you've struggled in some other sports and you find one where you get a little bit of success, it feels good. And if you got yourself surrounded by the right coaches and you've got good parents supporting you, and it's easy to fall in love with something when you're having a little bit of success. So those combinations of things really started that path of wrestling, for me through the state of Ohio. And then, my first many, many years, of course, in Ohio, Jefferson Union High School, which doesn't exist anymore, down on the east side of the state near Steubenville, Ohio. They went through a consolidation. They're the Edison local district. and it's Edison High now. But I wrestled there for a great coach named Dan Doyle, who went on to be inducted to a few halls of fame for his wrestling coaching in different states and so forth. A great leader. He went on to be a school superintendent. And I always had a connection with that family through those years and even to this day. And then I was just lucky, great coach to great coach, right? I made the right decision. I went to the University of Mount Union, where Don Montgomery became a Hall of Famer for his coaching. And so I thought I have to attribute it to this long career to having the right mentors. I fell into the right people at the right time. And so a little bit of success in high school with all state status. Looked at some big schools, Pitt. Jack Spates was recruiting for Pitt back in those days. And had some conversations with Jack before his long and legendary career out at Oklahoma and other places, and I looked at Kent State, and I looked at a couple other D1s in the area, but I wasn't being offered money, and I didn't deserve money at that time. I hadn't had quite that level of success. They were going to give me a shot, but I wasn't quite there. And so Don Montgomery at Mount Union made me feel really loved, man. I remember my visit and the dinner, and he kind of rolled out the red carpet, and I felt like this guy's going to have my back, and he did. And so from that day forward, just great times at Mount with all the old teammates, great wrestlers like Andy Lamancusa, and Jerry Tennant, Mike Sesser, and a whole bunch of other guys, David Fellini and Joey Pachorik, and guys that really supported my career, Mike Schonauer, training partners and such, and lots of All-American certificates between those guys and 100-match winners. And I think that combination of successes led me to wanting to be a college wrestling coach. All of that fun, all of that growth, and seeing Coach Montgomery's lifestyle kind of drew me to wanting to have a life like his, and being around a wrestling room and being around young men and providing them with the right dose. I always say, man, Coach Monty gave me the exact right dose of discipline and love, which really some people would say are the same thing. They get wrapped up together sometimes, right? But he knew when to give
hard to
me
see both sides sometimes, but
it is.
yeah, right.
It is. But he gave me that kick in the pants. Maybe we'll get into it. There's a story where he walked me into a custodial closet one time and let me have it. I mean, we're in this little 3x4 room, and he just let me have it one time. And he was capable of doing those things, and he was capable of giving me a hug and telling me that he loved me. And I wanted to be like him. And I hope that in some small way I have been in my career. And I still stay in very close touch with him and lead into his mentoring. And that's what I've always strived for, was to have a career kind of like Coach Montgomery's. And hopefully that's what it's been and what it'll continue to be.
That's awesome. I know he's been very impactful to a lot of people. So where was your first coaching stint? And I guess day one, learning from him, what was your kind of philosophy and plan from him?
Yeah, so I came out of college, and I was a first generation college student, but nobody in my family had ever gone to college. In fact, I think my father, we've looked at this a little bit. I think my father was the first Hibbs sort of in the family line, going back almost 300 years in America, to have really graduated, or at least celebrated graduating from high school.
Oh, wow.
My family's all from Appalachia, and they were in the coal mines, and lots of folks who probably never attended a day of school. And if they did, they were done by the 4th grade, the 6th grade. They were being gophers in the mining industry and doing those sorts of things, and trying to farm or whatever they could do in Appalachia to make a living. And so, I know that we've talked about my great grandfather. We can't figure out if he ever went to a day of school or not. My grandfather dropped out around the 5th grade, fought in World War II. And then my father did finish high school. And so, being a first generation college student, when I came out, I didn't know how to chase the path I really wanted really well. Wanted to be a college coach, and didn't exactly know how to connect the dots or to network. I didn't have those skill sets. I was a decent student. And so I started to work on it, but I went home for a year. I worked with my psychology degree in a children's home, and I wanted to coach. You asked about that. I went back to my high school coach, who I mentioned earlier was a great coach, Dr. Dan Doyle. And I went to him. He said, "Sure, we want you in the room." They had a guy named Scotty DeArmond, wrestled for Buckeye Local down the Ohio Valley. He went on to be third in the state D1. Scotty was a great wrestler, and he needed a training partner. I happened to be that size, just out of college. And so I went back and I helped Coach Doyle, and that's where I cut my teeth in coaching. And he was building a great program, just like he did everywhere he went in his career. So I was able to watch sort of the CEO management of a program, how to attract young wrestlers, how to, get the parents really involved in doing fundraising for you and booster clubs, and get them involved in a positive way, right? And some people complain about parent involvement, but really managing parent involvement, and letting them be involved in the program, and have celebrations with you in the right way. So I learned some of that. I learned about practice design. He was a really organized coach. He didn't wing it. And I've always been that kind of coach. I was working this morning on our practice designs for the rest of the week. And so I coached with him, and we had some success there. And it just reemphasized for me that I wanted to be a full-time coach. And so pretty quickly after that, I started to connect those dots I said that I missed. And I went back and I got a master's degree. Focus was kind of sports psychology. And that was my introduction to the state of Michigan. I came to Michigan State University to get that degree. And so that kind of led me then on the path to secure my coaching career. Once again, though, I got out of that program and I couldn't find a college coaching position. I really attribute it to the fact that I did not know how to network. I had not connected with coaches in the industry. I hadn't really availed myself to anyone in terms of what my skill set was, my passionate interest, or what I was capable of doing. So I found myself back at the college level for another 5 or 6 years. But then eventually I found my way into the Michigan State room. I was back there to work on a PhD, and they had a position open, and I jumped in with them for a while, and they were having great success at the time. Spartans had been, I think, 7th in the nation. We were 4th in the nation at the national duels. We had a guy named David Morgan, who was a national finalist.
Yep. I was there.
Nick Muzashvili was a stud up in the upper weights. He was a couple-time All-American. We had some good teams, and I learned a lot, of course, at a Division I Big Ten program that was really thriving at that time. I learned great things about the intensity of Division I, and year-round training, and about nutrition and strength gain and all those other pieces that maybe I still needed to pick up for my coaching resume. So I'm really grateful to Tom Minkle and Roger Chandler and Dave Dean and those guys that taught me some things through those years. And then my first opportunity at collegiate head coaching was at Division III Olivet. I loved the Division I. I enjoyed it. I understand why so many people are passionate about it. But I don't mind admitting I have other interests. I like to go fishing. I like to backpack, play some wiffle ball in the backyard with the kids, those kind of things. And in Division I wrestling, it's a dominating theme in your life. It's 50 weeks of the year. I felt like you get off about 2 weeks of the year sometime, maybe in the beginning of August or something. And other than that, through the holidays, through the spring and into the early summer, your shoes are on and you're in the room. And Division III was more of a nice balance for me. And I found, a sport where we do off-season training, but the guys kind of do it on their own, or they do it with a strength coach, and you're able to go be with family and do some other things. Of course, you're always marketing and recruiting, but
A different
I like that
sport.
lifestyle. I like that D3 lifestyle, and so all of that became my introduction to that type of coaching, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah, you mentioned David Morgan. I was there for his that was the first NCAA that I've been at, and I've had
Oh yeah, it was in Cleveland.
on. Yeah, yep. I had Teague on a few times and keep in touch with him over the years. But yeah, it was. I remember being there.
You remember the history of that match? A lot of people don't know what happened there. David was having quite a season. I think he was undefeated to the Nationals that year.
I'm pretty sure he was.
And he had like 3 seasons in a row with just 1, 2, 3 losses tops. He had been just a dominant wrestler after transferring to Michigan State. And I believe, now I'm going on a long-term memory here, right? So don't hold me to the exact numbers. But I do remember we had wrestled Teague in a dual meet a few weeks before the national championships, and handled the match. And I think really had a convincing win. And, I give Teague and Coach Smith and anybody involved in that program credit. They went back and they probably studied the film and did this and that. And they came out for those national championships really ready. And Teague rolled David up early in the match for a
Didn't
few
he
points.
inside trip him or something right off the rip?
Yeah, yeah, he scored 5, 4 or 5, and he took a lead. And then David, a grinder, he grinded back. He was going to get back in the match, and then they ended up in that neutral scramble.
Yep.
And these were the early days of scrambling, right?
Right.
We didn't have the Ben Askrens and these guys yet. And so these were early days of scrambling. And somehow or another, man, they're in this scramble, and I'm thinking, David's going to get this takedown. He's going to be right back in it. And we're going to go the second period, and it's going to be a tight match. And Teague rolled him up and stuck him in what I think was a neutral fall. I
Right.
think the mat was slapped before 2 points were awarded, which is of course okay. That's what happened, man.
Right.
But
See
it was
all
crazy.
him, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy to have that dual meet a few weeks earlier and then have that match. But yeah, those guys taught me a lot. I learned a ton there. We even had Sammy Henson there for a short while. Sammy was
Oh,
an
really?
assistant.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he came up to, sort of train with David and work with David, and he was there for a short while. And I saw that level of, world level intensity of somebody like a Sammy
Right.
Henson. So I try to learn from everybody I ever was around in wrestling, good, bad, and different. Just take the notes, keep a thick notebook, and move on and use it, in your own program.
Right. So speaking of Michigan State, right, and those that excuse me, listen and hearing your voice, right? How long were you the announcer for, or how'd you get into announcing, I guess, right? Because that was the tournament, right? That was the open back in the day, right?
Yeah. So when I was coaching at State and some other things happened, I ended up getting married and I was pursuing a PhD, and I was the volunteer assistant. In those days, it was, you could have one volunteer assistant, and you got to travel with the team. You got to do pretty much everything but recruit. You weren't allowed to be involved in recruiting. And I just got really busy with other, things in my life during that era. And I went to Coach Minkle and I said, I'm not sure I can be on the mat, this year. And how can I stay involved with this program? And, Tom always thought outside the box. Tom, a lot of people don't know the inner workings of Coach Tom Minkle, but, Tom Minkle, a musician, an artist, really, someone who,
Parrot or something. Even.
yeah, oh yeah, he was into birds. He really loved birds. He's into music. His whole family's into music, really terrific musicians, and a sister who's a great musician. He also is a phenomenal poker player, Texas Hold'em, one of the best I've ever met in playing that game. And he just he thought outside the box, and he did some really good marketing of his program and stuff in those days. And he said to me, you know what, you got a good voice and wrestling. And we need more people on a microphone like Ed Aliverti, who was the longtime announcer. And he said, I think you should consider this your way of staying involved when you're not able to coach. So I've always credited Tom with my first opportunity, obviously, in that. And I started announcing the Michigan State Open. And I tried to take the approach that Ed had done with NCAAs, where you really pay attention to every mat in the arena, and you try to draw the fans' interest to the match that is maybe in the moment the most exciting. It might be exciting because it's going to overtime. It might be a big comeback. It might be an All-American who's being upset by a freshman. But you try to draw the fans into what they might be missing because they're not looking that direction. And I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it. And I remember I wanted to kind of get a break and start going and doing some big national events. And I wrote a letter to Rod Beachler, who is still the head coach.
I have him. I had him on the show not too long ago, too, about a year ago. But
just a great man.
Yeah,
One of the great role models in the sport of wrestling is Coach Beachler. And he's a good friend these days. And I wrote him a letter. They were going to be hosting the D3s, down at Ohio Northern, which they did several times. Mm-hmm. And he got a hold of me. He said, Hibbsy, he said, you didn't have to write me this long letter. I'm sold. he said, get down here. Let's do this. And I went down. I announced maybe my first NCAA tournament. It was at the Division III level. I don't know if that would have been 98, 99, somewhere in there. And then within a few years, it just took off, and Ed Aliverti moved on, and I was able to be fortunate and pick up his contracts. And so I did, I think I was the first person, Sandy hadn't even done this. Sandy Stevens, of course, is who I'm referring to. Who I announced, I was blessed to announce by for so many years. But I got to announce Division threes, twos, and ones in successive years, many times. And then Sandy, I think, started doing it too, because she was doing the twos and ones mostly. And I was doing the threes and jumping over with her. And then I said, why don't you come do the threes with me? And for a few years there, we would just fly from city to city and announce the threes, twos, and ones. I think I did it for about 14 or 15 years. I,
Wow.
I think I did the Division ones 11 or 12 times. Of course, I did some D1 duels and all-star classics with the NWCA. Did a little bit of USA wrestling, not a lot, but a little bit of that. And then I just pop around and do feature tournaments, right? I was down, did the Medina tournament in Ohio at one point, and I'd do other big feature tournaments, the OVAC down the Ohio
Yeah,
Valley.
the
And
biggest conference there is, right? Did small
yeah,
ones too, right? Did the OEC or OEC stuff for a few
yeah,
years there.
it's fun. It's fun stuff down there. I loved it. I miss it. I really miss it, and then so these different times, my career's been in and out of coaching a little bit. And I would go back to coaching and I was like, geez, can I balance the coaching and the announcing or not?
Right.
I tried to, because I never wanted to give it up. It was a lot of fun, but life gets busy. Your kids get, my own children, right? They got into their sports and such. And finally, a few years back, the last match I called was Dake versus Taylor for the NCAA championship out in Des Moines. I thought, that's a great way to go out. I called this big match that everybody anticipated. It was the first year ever that the NCAAs decided they could do the finals in a different order in order to feature a match. And so it was really fun. And so I got to call that match. And then I decided, it's time to step aside and do some other things. And then about 5 years later, Roger Chandler called me up, and Michigan State was hosting the Big Tens. And he said, I know you don't do this anymore, but would you come back and do it for, one of your alma maters? Because I got a degree and a half kind of from Michigan State. So I said yes, and I went and I was able to do that. And, that's when Kuhn and Snyder were going at it and some other guys. And I think Massa had a huge match against Iowa and kind of flexed on Coach Brands and stuff. And
That went viral,
it-
right?
to get to be around that stuff and to see those things, and I got to call Anthony's match for Arizona State when he won the national championship, and to see was the young man's name from Minnesota, Ness, when Jason Ness came from behind and beat Daniel Dennis. I was on the microphone for that. And I mean, going clear back to the Johnny Thompson days and some big matches of his, I just had so much fun doing all that. And who knows, I mean, I'm focused really on coaching now, and that's what I'm going to do here at Alma College. But who knows what retirement could hold someday? I might want to get a microphone back in front of me. Those were some really fun times.
Yeah, you bring up a great point in announcing, right? Most sports, right? There's one action going on, but with wrestling, right? There's more to it at those, national tournaments, right? You got, several mats going on. So it takes another skill set, right? Kind of being aware of what's going on and kind of knowing what the crowd's wanting to see, right?
It's true. Your head's on a swivel. You want to be in a chair that spins. You got to be able to kind of look about, maybe not 360, but about a 270-degree angle. You're looking at all these mats, and you got to have some help. It's great to have a good spotter or co-announcer like, Sandy Stevens or someone you're working with who could say, hey, you're missing something on mat 7 or whatever. And you dive into that. I even got to a point where I had a couple of really good buddies who I'd look at the text messages in front of me and they'd throw me tips even from the peanut gallery. Hey, remember, there's a matchup of 2 3-time All-Americans coming up on mat 8 or whatever, And so I had a lot of friends that dove into it with me. And the big thing too, I always felt like you got to highlight those guys.
Mhm.
I mean, we know, you and I know as wrestlers ourselves who came through and endured surgeries and nutrition challenges and all these different things in our lives. We know what these men, and these days with women's wrestling being as great as it is, we know what these men and women have gone through. And when I was on the microphone, I just wanted to say their name out loud and to know that, grandma or grandpa is up there, mom and dad, and they're smiling, they got a tear in their eye. And one of the sessions that became my favorite, Jason Bryant, who's picked up all the contracts I used to have, we had a conversation a year or so ago. And he said, he asked me, he said, "Ty, were you the one that started doing that sort of that Saturday morning stuff, that showcase stuff where you talk about these guys in their last match and you ask the crowd to get on their feet and give him a standing ovation, even if they're not going out with a national championship," right? This is the session that's all consolation. It's the guys placing 3rd to 8th. And it used to be a session where, people would kind of sleep in, they wouldn't show up, and the crowd wasn't as big. And we wanted to spice it up. And I don't remember exactly, I don't want to take all this credit. There were several conversations in different rooms about how do we really spice this session up, make people want to be in those seats. And there were a few different things we did in terms of the configuration of the mats on the floor and different things that ESPN did in their coverage and that we did in the arena. But one of the things was to really start making sure we had all of our notes in order on these guys. And that when they walked out there for their 3rd and 4th place match, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, particularly if they're senior,
Right.
that we really highlight them. And we sort of talk about their whole career, not just that tournament. And we give their fans in attendance a chance to one last time, come up to their feet. And it always felt good to see those guys. They'd been hurting, right? Every one of those guys wrestling in that session had the goal of winning the championship, and they fell short for whatever reason. And for them to be able to pick up their chin and look up at their fan base, whether they're going out with a win or a loss, 3rd place or 4th place, but to have that applause and, grown, strong men walking out of that arena with tears in their eyes is a beautiful sight. And walking out knowing that they gave it their all and that their fans recognize that, to be a small part of that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's what definitely makes the NCAA experience, right? All the aspects that you mentioned, and not turning it, like you said, injuries, they could default, but they're giving their all, and then to share that moment with them and their fans and create that experience is pretty darn cool. So
It is. That tournament's fantastic. Of course, it's up here in my home state this year of Michigan, and
right.
I want folks to know how tremendous it's going to be. That D1 tournament this year is going to be phenomenal. I know that people think back to when it was in Detroit about 15 years ago, roughly, maybe 13 years ago, something like that. It was at the Palace of Auburn Hills, which was pretty isolated from a lot of the hotels and restaurants that people were trying to get to between sessions. That is not the case this year. I think the NCAA made a great decision in going to Detroit this year. People are going to see that at Little Caesars Arena, you are surrounded with entertainment and dining options and hotels, and you are walking distance from everything. I mean, dozens and dozens of high quality restaurants and sports bars. You've got 3 Vegas style casinos within walking distance. These aren't little riverboats. These are MGM Grand and places like that. You've got the arts, you've got Fox Theater next door. You've got other theaters in walking distance. So I think people are going to be really pleased with the D1s this year in Detroit. And I'm surely looking forward to them. And once our D3 season ends, and as the Scots, we hopefully have a strong campaign. I hope to be down there with some friends and take in that tournament this year.
Yeah, I've heard how much different it's going to be. I mean, even when it was in Cleveland this a couple of years ago, how well they did it, and I'm sure Detroit's taking notes from that. I have a good buddy of mine, actually, kid I coached, wrestled for Northern for Coach Beechler. Actually came up to your guys' Alma tournament. Cody Bellamy, he
Okay.
lives up in Detroit now, and he speaks highly of how much it's changed and what they have going on. So it's pretty cool to hear and talk wrestling. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to it from Ohio, right? Making a quick trip up there to watch it this year.
Easy
So.
trip to drive, be able to drive, not have to fly, and I think people are just going to love it. I think it'll be back in Detroit again within 10 years. I really do. I think they'll see it's a good place to have it.
Yeah, I mean, you could pretty accessible, So, so let's talk about Alma a little bit, right? So you were there in 2011, kind of brought the program back from 25 years, and now you're back, leading the team. That's what's going on, and a lot has changed in those last 10 years. But what's the current status and what's going on?
Yeah, so I went through some life changes in recent years, and just some things that happened really recently drew me, to start looking back at the state of Michigan a few months ago. My daughter's made the decision that she'll go to college in the state of Michigan, which is a big change. She was going to go out west. My son wants to graduate from high school in the state of Michigan. And so we've loved this state. I mean, Ohio was a great experience for me growing up there. And I grew up along the Ohio River, and great people and hard work ethic, and did a lot of fishing down in those places, and had a lot of fun growing up as a kid down there. Mount Union was wonderful for me, but I've also fallen in love with the state of Michigan. There's so much water here. You've got the Great Lakes surrounding. We live on a peninsula, for goodness sakes. And not only that, but the inland lakes. We've got like 13 or 14,000 inland lakes. I heard a stat one time: you're never more than 6 miles from water in the state of Michigan. I haven't gone out to verify that, but it seems true to me. You're always close. And so if you're someone who enjoys the water and kayaking and fishing and boating like I do, it's a great state to live in. And the wrestling here has improved so much in the last few decades. It's really climbing. Michigan was always a solid wrestling state, but the advent of my way, and so many kids over the years being involved, and Michigan's putting out, blue chippers to the D1 level. We've got people that have made wrestled for world teams and stuff now. And it's just a terrific wrestling scene. And we've added so many programs. When I first started coaching back at Olivet, we were like the lone D3 program, and now there's D3s added, there's JUCOs added. We've really grown this sport in this state on a lot of levels. In my experience at Alma from 2011 to 2016, it was a challenging one, but it was fantastic. I had the time of my life in coaching those teams with Jeremiah Tobias, and then eventually Fletcher Roberts, join us, and leading into leadership and support from people like Jeff Abernathy, the president at Alma, and Greg Hatcher, who's known all over the country for his philanthropic work, in the sport of wrestling. He's an Alma grad. And so Greg's always
Okay.
been real connected, to Alma. And I just, that 5-year run to go from, arriving to campus, we didn't have wrestling mats. We had no wrestling room. We didn't have any wrestlers. Some, a few high school kids walked in a college campus who had wrestled years before. But to go out and get a first recruiting class, and to double it up the next year, and to start doing some winning, and to start to get some achievement academically, and do some different things with a great coaching staff. The support that Jeremiah and Fletcher gave was just undeniable, and took us great strides in a short period of time. And then, when I left, it probably, looking back on it, it wasn't a great time to leave. We had just done all that hard work.
All the momentum was going, right?
Yeah, yeah. And in my last year, we had 3 All-Americans, first time ever in Alma college history, I think, in any sport, that we had 3 All-Americans in a year. So we had 3 All-Americans. I think we climbed in the top 6 in the rankings at one point. We still were getting some strong academic success. And then the big news was we had raised around $4 million or so for this new facility that was built. And so Mr. Hatcher and a fellow named Mr. Sherman and some other folks contributed. And we built this gorgeous wrestling room. And I was here just long enough to see it completed, and I never got to coach in it a single day, right? And right beneath it, we built an amazing performance center, a strength and conditioning room. And then we also did a cheer studio and some new offices and different things. And I walked away. And there were a couple of different reasons. Some family stuff, and I'd been commuting a pretty long drive to work at Alma. I had a goal of going back and getting a PhD, and there were some different things. And I don't mind admitting I've been guilty of this in my career. I coached for 5, 6, 8 years, and I get drawn into some other forms of leadership at times. And, I get this desire to go do something else. And I did that when I left Olivet. I left the wrestling job at Olivet to become a VP there. I was vice president for development, and I wanted to try a new challenge in raising money for the whole institution. And and I enjoyed it. It was a great job. I appreciate all of that giving me that opportunity. But my MO, right, is that I go back to missing wrestling. I mean, this just invariably happens. And so I became that VP, and I did that for a while. And then I met Mr. Hatcher, and I heard that Alma was adding wrestling, and I was like, gosh, I miss it. So I dove in, and we had that great 5 years with Alma. Then I started getting that itch again. I had a lifelong dream of getting that PhD and becoming maybe an AD. And so I chased that dream, and that became mostly realized. I'll finish that PhD here in the near future. And I was able to get a AD job down at Hiram College in Ohio. And of course, one of the first points of order at that job was to add wrestling.
Right. Right. So,
And I told him that in the interview process when I went down to hire him. I said, you guys had a great wrestling program back in the day, and I'd be interested in rallying the alumni and seeing if we could bring that back. And they were open to that. So after I got there, we wrote the proposal, and we got that done. And we added men's and women's, and brought in a great coach, and Andy Vogel, who had 13 years experience at Gettysburg College as a head coach, and built a strong program there. And so that was wonderful, and I'm glad that we did that. But then, like I said, life took a turn, and I needed to get back to the state of Michigan. And I was happy to start looking, and I started that sort of investigation back in the spring. Became a finalist for a couple of different jobs, AD jobs. One of them was going to be AD and coaching. It was going to be coaching a wrestling program, starting a wrestling program, while simultaneously being the AD at a JUCO.
wow, it's a lot.
And so there was that opportunity, and then finalists for a couple other jobs, including an AD job at a really larger school. And it all was really getting to the point of making a decision. And then boom, I was traveling. Actually, I was out west. I think I was in Montana. I was taking a little vacation time, and all this happened at Alma. And so I called my friend, Jeremiah Tobias, and check in on him and how things were going and what he was going to be doing. And I checked in with the coaches here. I mean, because I was here, right, 5 years with these guys. I mean, Jared Grunewald was one of my first two recruits. He was an undefeated state champion for Allendale, and Jared came and gave us credibility back in 2011-12, and became a national qualifier, multi-time Scholar All-American, and a great role model in the program. And called up Jared. I said, what's going on there? And I called up Fletcher Roberts, who wrestled for me also, and coached with me, and started to have this conversation right about the time I was thinking I was going to be accepting another position, and talked it through in about a 7-day window. It happened pretty fast. And ultimately what it came back to is, like I shared with you earlier, Jared, I needed to be back in the state of Michigan. And I thought, why not, two things. Why not do what is my favorite, career option and favorite thing I've ever done in my life? And that's, coach wrestling. Why not go to that comfort level that I'm passionate about and go do that, right now? And then in addition, if I'm going to do that, why not do it at the place where I felt so supported and felt like administratively and coaching wise, we had that magic combination, and so that was the decision. I withdrew applications and some other processes that I was in that I was confident were going to pay off. And I said, I want to do this. I want to be a Scot again. And I want to dive in. I want to be involved at the highest of possible levels in the sport of wrestling. And I also want to help the whole department. My position now is as director of wrestling. And so that includes being the head coach of the men's team right now and doing an evaluation on a decision about whether we'll add women's. And then also being assistant athletic director for development and external relations. So some more fundraising and marketing and working with people outside, the department. So it's a magic match for me. It's all of my passions rolled into one at a place where I love to work. And so I'm thrilled that I didn't expect this, but this opportunity to sort of fall in front of me, and to be grateful that folks invited me back. I'm ecstatic. And we're, in our third week of training the team. We need to add a few numbers. We're a little light on the practice partners in our upper weights right now, so we're out chasing those guys for next year. but we have talent in the room. We've got leadership in the room, and most importantly, we've got integrity in the room. And an amazing room it is. Like I started to say, we built this gorgeous facility. I think it might not be the biggest, but it's not small. We've got 2 full-size mats right now. We could fit more if we wanted to, but right now we're dedicating other space in it to bikes and row machines and all the other things you want to incorporate into a program. We've got amazing technological applications in our room. We have floor to ceiling windows on a second level
Wow.
that looks outside. You don't have that absolute darkness of a dungeon of a wrestling room like you usually have. I mean, this room is so beautiful that we roll the mats up. We intentionally had a curtain created at the end of the room so we can roll the mats up and put them behind the curtain. And we have this beautiful flooring that we can have banquets in there, and we can have VIP celebrations for the whole athletic department. It is an absolutely gorgeous wrestling room. And I think in recruiting, people are going to see that. They see what we have to offer, and that all we have to do is drop down the stairs into the room below us. And we have one of the best performance centers in all of Division III, also in our strength and conditioning center. And the person leading that strength and conditioning
Coach
center,
Roberts, right?
yes,
Oh,
is,
yeah.
is a wrestling guy,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think probably at 95% of institutions, that's a football person.
Right. Right.
And here at Alma College, he's a guy that is absolutely dedicated to supporting our football program and all 28 sports that are here. But he's a guy that wrestled in college, and he understands us. And my guys benefit not just from his knowledge on strength training, but his incredible comprehensive skill set of understanding nutrition and studying sleep and recovery and yoga and stretching and dynamic warm-ups. And he covers it all. And one of the reasons we were able to be so successful the last time is I got to be the head coach. I got to go do the stuff that a head coach needs to do and dedicate their time out there recruiting with families, marketing the program, raising money, designing practices, spending one-on-one time with athletes, making sure their needs are being met and that you're noticing if they're struggling. And then I had an assistant coach like I do now, who's incredible with technique and can add to the series, that I'm strong at. And now I've got an assistant coach who I never even need to walk in a weight room. I don't have to even think about this. Now I will, because I want to be connected with my guys, but we really have all the bases covered. We have one of the best facilities in the country. We have great administrative support. And I tell the guys, I said, you know what, last time we went from 0 to 6th in the nation, and set a record along the way for most Scholar All-Americans in a season ever. We did all that from no wrestling mats and no wrestlers on campus in 5 years. I said, let's see what we can do in these 5 years. Now that we have all the pieces in place and some great guys already on campus, well, let's see what we can do. So I'm thrilled. I'm excited as can be. I haven't even got to meet my parents yet for this program. I'm looking forward. We're going to see some of them this weekend at
Oh, nice.
Russell Lofts, and I'll start to get to know the families a little bit and just starting to get into the recruiting and starting to chat with some guys. But right now I've been diving into my guys, here on campus, our guys, and getting to know them. So that's where we are right now.
That's awesome. That's what I was going to bring up next was the assistant AD spot. Kind of, it's a small school, but what else is it? What other academic and athletic programs that it's known for?
Yeah, Alma has a high profile academically. This is a strong institution. I don't mean to put other institutions down, so I won't name them. But I'll put us up against anybody. I think when you think about the state of Michigan, and if you want to wrestle in college, and you are very serious about your academics, and you're thinking, I want to be a tremendous businessman or woman, if we add women's, or I want to be a doctor, I want to be a physical therapist, I want to go to a school that I know has a track record of putting people into medical school, putting people into graduate programs and professional schools. I mean, Alma College ranks up there with Michigan and Michigan State in terms of those kinds of numbers. We're incredibly strong academically with comprehensive offerings, in terms of course offerings and academic majors. We have a thriving arts program. I think we have everything there is to offer academically. And I would encourage those people out there listening who want to go somewhere that are very serious about their academics and want to be surrounded with a lot of support in their wrestling program, that we're a terrific option. If you're going to look in the state of Michigan, we're one of those three great options, I think, in terms of academic profile with the wrestling program.
That's awesome. Good to hear. That's awesome. Yeah, I remember talking to Coach Tobias, and he spoke highly of Fletcher Roberts too, and it's awesome. He's still there, and like you said, you don't have to step in the weight room, but that piece, it's taken care of. Having him. So
it is. Well, let me give Jared the same love. Jared Grunewald and his 6 or so post years of collegiate, his post graduation coaching experience, he's become quite a leader. And in the few weeks I've been back here with Jared, I knew Jared as a man when I was here. He wrestled for me, right? And I knew he was going to develop into this type of a coach. But to watch what he's doing now technically with these guys, and his attention to detail and film study, and making sure that we get every guy to thrive at what they're best at, I think he's really good at that. And they know he's a man of integrity and of his word. And so to lean into Jared and to lead into Fletcher is going to allow us, to do what we've done here in the past.
Awesome to hear. Looking forward to seeing you guys this year, watching you guys. Anything else you have? Anything I left out or didn't?
No, I just encourage people to, keep an eye on us, reach out to us. We're in transition, and, transitions you are a little difficult in the beginning. Guys have to learn their new coach. And I left here, 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago. So none of these guys know me. And so they're getting to
Just
know
the
me.
name, right?
That's right. Well, maybe. I hope so. I hope so. I don't even know that. I'm getting kind of old, right? I don't even know that, but hopefully they do. And, but I hope that they'll lean in and they'll look at what we have to offer and see that we've got some experience at this, and that each of our coaches in this program have their sons or daughters, best future in heart and in mind. And that's what we're working on. So just take a look at our website, look at our marketing that's out there on social media, and go ahead and jump on the train with us, because we know where it's headed, and the destination is going to be a beautiful place, and it's going to be strong academically. It's going to be strong athletically, and we hope that people will come join the Scots.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Absolutely, Jared. Anytime. Please tell your family I said hello. I always appreciated your family and the opportunities that they gave me in my announcing career early as well. So you uppers, take care of yourself, and we'll be here if you ever want to reach back at us.
Cool. Will do.